All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. This is about as many people as we've had, which is awesome. So we're going to talk about building a demo studio, something that you can do at home or for mobile purposes, in hopes to listen back to the music that you write. For me personally, I'm never able to like truly accurately judge a song that I have written while I'm playing it. I might be able to say, oh, I hit the right notes on that, but I can't qualify whether it's a good song. And for the most part, that's subjective anyways. I'm sure most people wouldn't think the music I write is good. So, but if I'm able to listen back to it, I'm able to use a critical ear and essentially start to determine what things need to be edited. Like maybe this part can be a little, it should change the dynamic, or maybe I should cut it completely, or the second verse should be half the length of the first verse. Things that you might not recognize while you're playing it. So it's always important to be able to listen back. For me, I think I really truly realized that when I started like looping with guitars. Like I might loop a chord progression and then try something out over it. And then I just sit there and listen to the chord progression like, oh, that doesn't work at all. And it changed my perspective in songwriting. So I'd start to demo things a little bit on a little bit larger scale using like old 4-tracks. So you have to figure out what the goal is before you start shopping to build your recording studio. Are you hoping just to demo like song skeletons so that way you can show your bandmates? Or are you hoping to record like a rehearsal? Or do you want to be able to like actually track full bands? Because that will certainly adjust what you buy and how much you spend on it. First things first, these days I would just recommend using a computer if you got it. I mean, you can still get cheap tape cassette 4-tracks out there, but it's not conducive to the process. It takes longer. I don't even know where you buy blank cassettes anymore. Things like that. There are some hurdles. Most people have smartphones, and you can get like little 4-track apps that work better than those old cassette recorders, in my opinion. So you got a 4-track app on your phone. I think there's an app, and it's called 4-track. If you guys felt like investing $1 on something that you can work with, but just doing that, you could record some guitars and vocals right to your phone and email it to your band right from your phone, which blows my mind. And then Apple, I believe GarageBand is free for the iPad and the iPhone now, and although it's kind of handcuffed in comparison to the computer version, you can still demo the skeleton of a song pretty easily, which blows my mind. So for iPads, that's a pretty good option. Sadly, the iPad microphone isn't great, so you might be able to kind of fake it through there. But they make little interfaces that you can plug into any of the Apple tablets or other tablets. The issue that you're going to run into with a tablet or a netbook that's also on here is that they just don't have the horsepower realistically to record more than 1 track at a time, and sometimes that you might even have a hiccup with that. So it's important that when you are shopping for whatever that first piece is, you invest properly based off of what you're looking for. So a netbook might be cheap, but it might not be able to actually run the software as well as operate the recording aspect as well, just because that's just not what they're designed for. It's usually pretty taxing and requires a decently fast hard drive and more RAM than you'd expect in your computer. Laptops, don't chimp out. Put in a couple extra dollars. In my opinion, if you're going to be recording anything at all, I'm so impressed with how Apple computers operate. For me, doesn't get much better. It comes down to how the operating system functions, and the operating system the way it essentially works is it takes better advantage of how or utilizes the hardware more efficiently and it just works better with in conjunction with the hardware. So it's pretty smooth in terms of general operation. Windows, on the other hand, it just isn't. It's not to say that it can't be done. It just doesn't utilize the hardware as well, which causes lag, and it's why if you go to Best Buy and you look at a MacBook and it's $1,200, and then you compare the specs of the MacBook to the PC version with the similar specs, PC version is probably going to be like $500. But realistically, a lot of those specs are overclocked and hyped up on those PC machines because they are they need to have an overclocked processor and things like that in order for Windows to run better. So you can actually, even though the Apple hardware might seem like it's not as strong or powerful, the operating system allows it to use 99% of it, and it makes for a very smooth running machine, which is why most, it seems like artists, whether it's video production, audio production, photography, a lot of them use Apples. So then with desktops, same deal. I don't even know if people are really using desktops as much anymore. It feels like the industry is shifting mobile, with laptops. But in studios, especially big studios, it's still primarily desktop based. So like the Mac Pros, although I don't see a lot of studios shifting to the new Mac Pros that look like the little trash can. If you guys have seen those, they're black and they look like a tiny trash can, which is really weird. But whatever, if you want like something that looks like a droid out of Star Wars sitting next to your your computer desk, it's cool. Beefy machines, but for a small scale home stuff, chances are you can get away with a laptop. So software, the difference between the various software these days, they all do the same thing at the end of the day. They all do the same thing. Realizing now as I look at this paper that I forgot one, so we'll just kind of go through the list. Pro Tools, they are the original. They were essentially the first of any computer-based company to try their hand at software-based audio recording. They were doing drum machines, and the drum machine would have it all listed out: kick, snare, tom, hi-hat, ride, and there would just be a bunch of boxes going from left to right, and you just kind of plug in where you'd want the kick to hit and the snare to hit and all that. And then they thought about, like, why couldn't we just put in real audio in here and have it play the same way? So they assembled their the early generations of Pro Tools. And one of my old teachers he was one of the first 8 people to invest in his Pro Tools rig, and this was in the late 80s or early 90s, and his rig was the Pro Tools hardware, which you needed to run the software. So it was the hardware, a computer for the actual Pro Tools software, and then their storage device, which held 512 megabytes, which was huge at the time, obviously. And he was able to get it for a mere $110,000, I believe. Our phones are infinitely smarter than that setup now, so it just blows my mind. But he's been pretty much ahead of the game ever since then, which is cool. And his studio, he had, thanks to his early investment in Pro Tools, he had was essentially like a massive collection of drum samples that he had made with just from tracking bands, and he had all these drum hits, and just was able to sell them and help invest deeper into more Pro Tools gear. But because they were the first, they've kind of led the way. So throughout the 90s, they were number one. And the thing with Pro Tools and DigiDesign, which is now called Avid, that's their company, is that in order to use their software, you had to own their hardware, and their hardware was expensive. It was very expensive. So then they made the kids version, which a lot of home engineers were using, Pro Tools SE. But the problem with SE is that it was handcuffed. It was small, and I think they had a 24 track limit, and you couldn't use a lot of extra stuff because they wanted you to buy the nice full version, which was like 10 times the price. And additionally, you could only use the software if you bought their hardware. And in the early 2000s up through now, companies kept on putting out better and better hardware than what Pro Tools was releasing. So now, these days, the market has leveled off quite a bit. Most studios still use Pro Tools because it's like the most widely spoken language in the audio industry, but a lot of people debate whether it's the best. These days, it's a lot cheaper, and you can get like a full unlocked version for like $500 or $600 that you can do like unlimited tracks and all that. But people still think it's the best for like really deep editing due to a lot of the key commands and just how it edits. Logic, that they were a cool application in the late 90s that was bought by Apple and then redesigned and rebuilt from the ground up. These days, Logic is a pretty fierce competitor for Pro Tools because it does almost everything that Pro Tools does. The editing is different, but just about equal in my opinion. But the big thing that Logic has now, and specifically with Logic X, is that for $200, which is cheaper than just about any DAW, it has a great recording interface. Just how it works is just spectacular, and they've attempted to kind of replicate all of the other important elements that people end up buying in the industry. So it has a ton of plugins. Those are like EQs and compressors and things like that, and they're really good. They're shockingly good. It has a ton of software-based instruments, so like synthesizers, pianos, killer sampler, and sample collection. It's huge, a huge library, like 50 gigabytes of samples. And then it has Apple's version of what essentially Easy Drummer is, so you can program drums, and they give you like different drum kits and sounds and things like that. It has its own auto-tune, and it's not like the auto-tune that you know and love from pop radio, but like it's just a fine tuner, primarily used for voice, and it works really well. And considering that each of these things that it includes for $200 sell for $200 by the other companies, like Melodyne's pitch corrections, $200, Easy Drummer is like $150. The fact that Logic has all this stuff included for $200 and is a powerhouse recording software just blows my mind. I don't know how anything else competes. Cubase is just another option, just a general recording application. It works. Like I said, they all do about the same thing, but at this point, like I don't feel like what they're including makes it worth investing in over Pro Tools or Logic. Ableton and Reason are similar in their competitors the way Pro Tools and Logic are. They aren't recording applications as much as their programming applications. So a lot of dance music and mixes that are done in Ableton these days. Reason is a great collection of synths and samplers and things like that, and a lot of it's modeled after early. Yeah, Fruity Loops is another one that they all kind of program. That's what they're a lot of the EDM that you kids are listening to. That's what they do. The dubstep that's all made in Ableton for the most part. It's an amazing piece of software, but you wouldn't necessarily record live instruments into it. Chances are you'd record it into something like Pro Tools or Cubase and then import it into Ableton to be manipulated for whatever it is that EDM manipulates. Yeah. Boy, I put those words in the right order. That sounded good. So, the other one that's not on here because I'm an idiot is called Reaper. When I was in high school, there was a program out called Winamp, which was essentially like the first decent MP3 player. This was probably 98, 99. This kid wrote it as a college assignment. And it was a really good MP3 player. It was awesome. And then he sold it to I think like AOL or something like that for millions of dollars. He sold his homework for millions of dollars, and since then he's just been writing music apps, and he made Reaper, which is an attempt to compete with Pro Tools or Logic or whatever. And it's pretty good. These days, the current version is pretty strong. And he basically gives it away for free. And if you want to give him like $30, he'll take it. And it's shockingly cool and shockingly good. So if you're looking for a cheap, easy way to get into like big time DAW software, that's hard to beat. Yeah, that's exactly it. Also, GarageBand I listed under Logic. You know, that's just included with Apple computers these days. If you buy it, it's a really easy way to get into recording and demoing songs, and it has a bunch of software instruments and MIDI instruments and loops that you can kind of drag in, and it allows people to get into recording really easily and really quickly. So, from software is hardware, the interface. This is just what you plug. You could either plug a keyboard or a guitar directly into this box, or you plug your microphone into this box. And the interface has what is called conversion, which takes an analog signal and converts it to digital ones and zeros to send over a cable into your computer. And then usually back over that same cable back into the interface, and then to some sort of analog output for your studio monitor or headphones. So when shopping, just figure out how many inputs and outputs you need. Like, in my opinion, you either go all out or you just skimp. You know, like, if you aren't recording bands, just get the cheapest 2-channel interface you can find on Craigslist for $30. Just because it's never going to sound good. You know, you either invest in hopes to sound good, or you just skimp. So you have to consider what kind of cable you're going to connect to your computer with the interface. So most interfaces are USB 2. Now, try not to get like super nerdy, but like USB 2 is pretty old technology at this point, and it can, I believe it there can be 400 megabits per second on that cable total. So if you are sending audio into your hard drive or into the computer, and then it's taking it back out to play through your monitors or headphones, it's basically saying it can do 200 each way. And I don't know if that's a lot, honestly, but I do know that the times that I've tried to use a USB interface and record more than like 4 tracks at one time, so if I was doing 8 or 12 or something like that, I would get errors popping up because it can't handle that workload. It's too much, which is why in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a big push for a type of cable called Firewire. And Firewire was 400 megabits per second, the same as USB, but it could do 400 both directions, so essentially 800. Then they moved it up to Firewire 800, which could do 800 both directions. So that could handle the workload, though that can get up to like 20 tracks without having any hiccups. So you have to consider what you are investing in and making sure that it can handle your needs. You have to also look at the type of XLR or TRS inputs that an interface has. The interface that I have has 4 mic inputs, so you might feel a little bit limited, like what can you do with 4 mic inputs? But it also has 4 TRS inputs that kind of look like instrument cables, and you could buy external preamps and plug it in to expand it, which is a cool way to do things. I couldn't recommend that enough. And something worth noting, most interfaces, the preamps that they have, they all suck. They will never sound good. So when you plug in a mic to a an interface that you even spend $1,000 on, it's probably not going to sound great. So that's why when you go to a studio, you'll see like racks and racks of just external mic preamps, just because hopefully your interface will allow you to bypass the preamp on the box itself, and then use an external one that sounds good. I always feel like mics are like guitars and mic preamps are like amplifiers. So, there's a variety of sounds, and you want to make sure that you are using the right mic preamp for the right setup. and it takes a while to kind of learn what your mics and your mic pre's sound like, but it makes a big impact. Really does. So monitoring, you got to listen to your music somehow, and when you're trying to record music, they usually say that you should try to listen to it on multiple devices, so you can make sure that it references properly, meaning like listen to it in your car. Does it sound as good as other stuff? Listen to it on your home theater or through your television. Listen to it on iPod headphones. Listen to it on nice headphones. And then listen to it on the worst headphones you could find. So find someone with like Beats by Dre and then check it out on there and see how it sounds. And if it sounds really terrible and overhyped bass, you probably nailed your mix, because that's how those sound. So anyways, invest in some decent studio monitors. I like studio monitors just in general. I think they sound great. If you listen to studio monitors compared to something like that you pick up from Best Buy, monitors actually usually sound better, in my opinion, because they try to keep it relatively flat on the EQ, meaning the bass isn't hyped, the mids aren't scooped, and the treble isn't hyped. And that's pretty standard affair for most home theater speakers that you'd buy at Best Buy, or just in general, because they try to make it sound like it's huge and it's popping and it's really pristine and crisp and clear, when in fact they're just kind of like faking all of that. So they tune those speakers and the boxes that hold them to kind of replicate a certain sound. But studio monitors, they try to keep it relatively flat, give or take. Personally, I like 8-inch studio monitors because I feel like those have a decent amount of bass response compared to smaller speakers. If you get smaller speakers, I like to reference off of where, like, using a subwoofer as well, just so I can turn it on and off and feel like I have a better understanding of where the bass sits. But then again, this is all based off of what it is you are trying to accomplish. If you're just doing skeleton demos of songs for your bandmates, the type of monitors you invest in probably aren't as important. When shopping for monitors, just make sure that you are recognizing if you're buying powered or non-powered. Powered usually means there's one of the speakers has a power amp and powers the other speaker. Non-powered means that neither of them have power, and you actually have to buy an external power amp to power them. And then there's also something called bi-amped, but that's usually for nicer monitors, where it means each monitor has its own amp built in. For what it's worth, I have these JBL monitors they sound pretty terrific. I'm a big fan of them. But they have the one thing that I thought studio monitors should have had pretty much since the dawn of time. That's the power button on the front. Like, it seems like such a simple thing, but like I've had a bunch of studio monitors where the monitors are like going to sit back on a desk or like on stands that are kind of far back, and like to have to like try to like lean over everything and get behind the monitor and make sure you don't accidentally unplug a cable or do something, then flip the switch on and off, that's rough. So bravo JBL, power button on the front. Okay, so I think that personally, like you guys know me, I buy most of my stuff on Craigslist. So if I was to buy studio monitors today and I was on a budget, I would look for Event 2020 monitors. You can find them on Craigslist for like $200, and they are terrific speakers. I still have mine. I can't, even though I've got those JBLs now, I can't get rid of those 2020s because they're terrific. My buddy Pete built a 5 or a 7-1 system in his basement for like watching movies, and they're all Event 2020s. Even though they're huge, he just loves how they sound, and he's just like, may as well keep it consistent, and he's got 7 of these things in his basement, which is awesome. Also, headphones. When you're writing music, obviously, if you're going to be writing music at 3 a.m, probably not great to use these lovely studio monitors, so you'll probably have to use headphones. But normally, the good rule of thumb is that headphones are not a good way to only record. You use it as a reference, so you listen to your speakers, then listen to it on headphones. And there are usually 2 different types of headphones in the studio. There are ones for tracking and ones for mixing. Tracking usually means that it's a fairly realistic sound, but there's a big focus on isolation, so that way when they're over your ear, you don't hear too much else. whereas mixing headphones are trying to be comfortable and a flat listen. So Sennheiser HD 280s are incredible headphones. That's like the SM57 of headphones, and you can pick them up on eBay for like between $35 and $65, and they're awesome. I have 2 pairs at home. I can't recommend them enough. I made a mic list of things that, like, if I was to buy mics now, I would consider these. There's a lot of options out there. Usually, good rule of thumb: don't skimp. If you have $200 and the option is 1 mic or a box of 7 mics, buy the 1 mic. Usually, those kits, they don't sound good. If you you want to buy a nice condenser mic and you can get the Shure like KSM 32 or the PG 32, get the KSM. Like don't buy the kids model. Always just get the right one the first time. It's just such a massive difference. Like if you guys were shopping for guitars right now, I doubt any of you would be considering an American Strat or a Squier. You'd probably just I'll just get the good one. So that way you don't have to just constantly be upgrading everything. So I kind of gave you a list of things that the different types of mics and what they're used for, and just like some of my favorites. And these are things that you see commonly in studios. Now there's going to be as many different types of mics as there are guitars or amps out there. There's an endless variety. So these are just some classics. So dynamic mics, which are essentially like little speakers. Like the mic I'm talking into now isn't that different than an iPod headphone. If you cut off the iPod headphone cable and connected it to an XLR cable, it could operate the same. It's not going to sound good. And same deal. We could turn this mic into a speaker with very little effort. That's just the nature of the device. So this is considered a small diaphragm dynamic microphone. Dynamic mics, like I said, are just essentially like durable, larger speakers. Shure SM57, that's like the most classic guitar or snare drum microphone. You can get a lot of mileage out of it, even though I don't think it sounds like great. You can actually use it for a lot of things. SM58 is not used in recording often, but the times that I have to record like hardcore bands and things like that, people who aren't what I would call traditional singers, putting headphones on them and having them walk up to a microphone that's on a stand and having them scream, it makes them feel uncomfortable and unnatural almost every time, because that's not what they do. They usually grab the mic with 1 or 2 hands and they let loose. So a lot of times if I'm recording a hardcore band, I'll use something like a 58, or at least I'll try it to see if that's the sound. Because talked about it before, like performance is the most important thing, and if you get a mediocre performance because you're using a good mic, but you get a great performance and use a kind of a weaker mic, I'll take the great performance every time, because that translates better to me than like, oh, I can really hear the spit in his mouth because I used that $1,000 microphone. I want to hear it done right. So sometimes the SM58's the answer, even though it's usually like the last mic used in the world of recording. Sennheiser's, the two small dynamic mics. The 609 is like the pancake or tennis racket looking mic that we use on the guitar cabs here at the Oasis. 604 is the little clip mic on toms, but both of those are very, very similar to the SM57, just a different shape to allow for some cool things. Bear, which I usually consider for dynamic mics just a notch above Shure. 201 is just a good snare guitar mic. The M88 was like the Barry White vocal mic, so it has like this cool low end to it. But those are like a little fancier, not necessarily more expensive, but fancier. So that's not necessarily where I would start in the world of home recording. So large diaphragm dynamics, these are just bigger. So think of almost like a kick drum microphone. Most kick mics are EQ'd for kick drums. So I personally don't use like a kick drum mic on bass cabs or anything like that. But there are a variety of large diaphragm dynamic mics, and the Shure SM7B, that is just a classic large diaphragm dynamic mic. That's usually next up if I'm going to track hardcore vocals or metal vocals. That's the next one I try. But it is used on everything. I have it on my hi-hat right now because it sounds awesome on it. I'm trying to think of what else. Incubus uses it for vocals. Michael Jackson used it for vocals. Life in Times used it for guitar and kick drum. It sounds awesome on toms. Like it is a Swiss Army knife of a microphone, and you can pick them up for like $200 on Craigslist, and it's just amazing. Sennheiser 421 is it's like a classic guitar mic. Most metal records are made with that mic on a cab. The 441 is a great snare mic or under snare mic, and it also this is the most important part about it. It was Borat's mic when he walked around in the movie Borat. So it's got that going for it. And then there's the EV RE20. This is another large diaphragm mic. It's like a 70s kick drum sound. That was like a lot of Motown sounds, which is a cool mic. But these days it's been adopted by the radio, so almost every time you see a radio interview, that's what they're using. But oddly enough, Tom York from Radiohead uses that mic for vocals, which just blows my mind. I sound terrible when I use it on vocals. A few kick mics. These are like the three standards. The D112 by AKG. It looks like, or it makes it sound like a basketball is dribbling in a gym. Not for me, but a lot of records were made with that mic. The Beta 52 and the Sennheiser E602s are other just good kick drum microphones that you could go to Guitar Center and pick up right now. Condenser mics, same deal. They're small diaphragm and large diaphragm. And condenser mics they usually require phantom power, which makes them more sensitive, and they have kind of a clearer tone almost. So the small diaphragms are usually used for overhead on drums or room mics. They sound cool on guitars. I'll use them on like acoustic instruments because they're really crisp and clear. So Shure SM81 or 181 or 98, those are all good ones. AKG 451, 460. My favorites, due to the price, are the Octava MK012 or MK012. It's weird. These things should be $700 for a pair. But years ago, I believe Guitar Center was selling a ton of them, and then wanted to order more and commissioned more to be made, and they got there was like a Chinese knockoff that Guitar Center unknowingly bought like millions of these things, and once they figured it out, they just started blowing them out for $99 for a pair of them. And the Chinese one compared to the Russian one it doesn't sound good. There's some small differences that you can look up online to make sure that you know what you're buying. But the benefit here, if there's a positive in the whole situation, is that Craigslist tends to be flooded with these things. And like I said, they should be $700. But I think I currently have 12 of these mics that I've picked up for like $100 for a pair, just on Craigslist at random times, and they sound incredible. I use them for toms, overheads, rooms. Just a great Swiss Army knife, and if you can pick up a pair for $100 or a couple $100, it is well worth it. Large diaphragm condensers. This is the Swiss Army knife microphone. You use it for everything: guitar cabs, overheads. This is like the vocal mic when you're recording. So Shure KSM. If you can find a KSM for $400 or less, it's a great mic with cool options. AKG 414, that's like it's the Stratocaster of microphones, just like the most widely used version of that type of mic. So cables, Amazon has incredible deals on cables. Like people go to Guitar Center or Musician's Friend to buy an instrument cable. It's worth checking out. The cost on Amazon. Same thing with the site Monoprice. I wouldn't use a Monoprice cable for a live performance, just because they're not in the business of making instrument cables. But you can, if you want to pick up a cheap XLR cable for home use, it's great and unbelievably cheap. So it's worth checking out. Plugins. If you are not satisfied with the plugins included with your DAW software, there are some pretty cool options out there. There's a lot of companies that try to replicate old actual outboard hardware, or just try to push the envelope in what computer technology offers. Like I said before, Logic has a ton included, but if you wanted to buy other stuff, Waves is like one of the premier companies for plugins. That think of them like what Gibson is to guitars, Waves are to plugins. And every weekend they have some sort of sale. They make hundreds of different plugins, and they'll put 3 on sale every weekend. So I've bought a couple like $300 plugins for $39 or $49 just because they had them on sale. So it's a great option. And then Black Friday has become, it's been adopted by audio software companies as like, that's the weekend that they are going to just blow everything out. So, and it's incredible. So, so much so that it's made our conversation here, where it's, Slate, which is a good example. Stephen Slate made like unbelievable drum software for a long time, and then he's slowly but surely branched out into making just general drum samples, like emulating old compressors, emulating mixing consoles, things like that, or tape machine emulation. And any of those plugins on average is like $200 to $400, but you can buy them all on Black Friday for like $300 just for the package deal. I mean, there are some massive discounts. So every September, October, I start putting a few bucks away just to see who's going to blow out stuff this year, which is great. So for your room, if you are having recording issues, not necessarily in making good sounds, but more so in trying to make sure that your room sounds okay, as well as not, it doesn't interfere with the other people around you if you're in an apartment or at home with family members. ATS, if you Google them, ATS Diffuser or Acoustics, it's just a company in Illinois. I talked about them about setting up your practice space a couple months ago. You can buy acoustic panels, kind of like what we have on the walls here, to help with sound diffusion or sound absorption, or they have the parts if you want to build them on your own, and it's pretty cheap. You can use diffusers, and a diffuser could be anything. It's something that breaks up the sound in terms of the directions. So if you just have a flat wall, just putting a bookcase on there and maybe pulling out every few books just a little bit, that helps. It just changes the direction of where the audio is going to bounce. And then lastly, the Gramma, Gramma. It's just from the company Auralex, who makes foam. It's just a cool way to get your amp or sub or whatever is creating a lot of vibrations off the ground, and hopefully there won't be as much transference in terms of the overall vibrations. So hopefully that can kind of like cut down on some of the sound. If your sister's complaining that you're playing black metal riffs at 2 a.m. Yeah. Other miscellaneous stuff. Things that you might want to consider: a pop filter, which microphones usually, especially condenser microphones, they're sensitive. So just the sound that you make when you use words that have a P, plosive, pizza, things like that. There can actually be like an audible click that you can't get rid of on your recording. And so just having a windscreen through there, some form, like what people used to do is just take like a hanger and put a nylon over it, so that way the air gets broken up. But I mean, you can get cheap ones out there, or if you're in like a hardcore screaming metal bands, they make some that are dishwasher friendly, which is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. A pad. This is you hear that plosive? Did You hear that pop? That's where the pop filter comes in. A pad is something that goes in between the mic and the mic cable, usually, in case your source is too loud. So let's say you have one mic over your drum kit, and they're playing, and it's just so loud, and your gain knob on your interface or your mic preamp is all the way down, and it's still too loud. You can get something called a pad, and it's just like this little thing that just plugs in between, and that will cut out, like 10, 15, 20, 40 decibels. And that's pretty useful. There are times where I use one, so worth considering. An external hard drive. Most of the time, they recommend that you don't record to the computer that's running the software, because you're asking the computer to run Logic or Pro Tools, which is a huge job, as well as write all of the data while you're recording live. That's asking a lot. So they recommend getting an external hard drive. So your hard drive that has Logic or Pro Tools can run the software, and then all the audio gets written to another hard drive. So you usually want to make sure that you have a hard drive that's fast. Now, all of this depends on how many tracks you're tracking. So if you're just going to do 2 or 4 tracks at a time, you might be able to make it work. But if you go above that at all, it's worth getting an external hard drive and probably buying a faster one at that, in terms of how many RPMs it can write or spin. A UPS, this is not the brown truck, uninterruptible power supply. If you're recording, or even if you're not recording, if your computer's just on and the power goes out and your hard drive just goes off and crashes and dies and never comes back, that's awful. That's awful. And a UPS, an uninterruptible power supply, is maybe $200. Data recovery is like $200 an hour. So it's a small price to pay to have some form of insurance for all the hard work that you do. And usually you can plug in a hard drive and a computer into this. It's basically something that you plug into the wall. And it's almost like, depending on the one you get, but almost imagine a car battery that has a power strip attached to it. So when you plug it in, and it usually has a USB cable too, and you plug the USB into the computer. And when the power goes out, the UPS is on and nothing turns off. Then once the UPS realizes that it is no longer being fed power from the wall, it sends a signal through the cable to the computer to shut down and shut off everything smoothly and cleanly. And for $200, tough to beat. I want one of those for my whole house. Sadly, that'd probably be expensive. Anyways, next up, mic stands. Mic stands and cables are the things that no one wants to buy, but they have to. So don't cheap out on mic stands. Even though it feels like there's only 2 parts, the cheap ones, those 2 parts will break, guaranteed. So it's worth getting something that's somewhat durable. And they make different types of mic stands. They make short mic stands for guitars or kick drums. They make round bass. They make tripod. You just have to figure out what works for you. And talked about at the practice space music meeting. You go to Home Depot and you can get like the wall shelf. They're not even shelves. They're like, you use them for in your garage to like hang all your rakes. Get those and just throw all your mic stands on a wall. It's a nice way to get them out of the way. So where to shop? For recording stuff, I buy used. Realistically, there are people out there who think writing and recording music is easy, and they spend a lot of money on doing it, and then realize very quick it's not easy, and it takes more work, and they're not good at doing it, so they sell all their stuff cheap on Craigslist, and that's where I am. I'm sitting there waiting for them to sell all their stuff cheap on Craigslist. My friends call it Greg's List, because I have pretty good luck on there. Craigslist is a great option. These days, I prefer, personally, Facebook classified ads, only because it's as close to an internet face-to-face transaction as you'll get. Craigslist can be pretty dicey, and I could probably do a monthly music meeting about all of the greatest horror stories I've had from Craigslist. I'm actually me and my friend are working on like a narrated animated video series based off of all of my unbelievably crazy, weird Craigslist transactions. So, yeah, maybe we'll do that sometime down the line. But that's why I like Facebook Classifieds, because at least there's some sort of human element to it. Forums are a great option. So my two favorites for recording stuff are Tape Op and Gear Sluts. And what's cool about both of those sites is that there are like legitimately good recording engineers who have made records that you have listened to, who are just contributors, and you can go ask them questions and talk to them. Especially Gear Sluts, they do some pretty crazy things in terms of getting like, they'll get like Butch Vig to talk for a week, like just ask him whatever you want. Like, hey man, what was it like recording Nirvana Nevermind? And he'll write, it was good. And then you just had that interaction with Butch Vig. It's just amazing. It's so cool. But yeah, I mean, it's a cool website, and the classified moves pretty quick. So there's always new stuff on there. And then tremendously underrated option is the used Guitar Center website. I am shocked as to the deals that are on there, either from people who trade in their stuff and get almost no money for it, or Guitar Center employees who don't realize the value of something, or if they just don't care and they just list it cheap. I have gotten some pretty amazing deals, like those shocking deals. I got a $700 ribbon microphone on there for $1. Like, it was listed, and I called up immediately, and I'm like, hi, I'm calling about the $1 microphone, and they're like, yeah, it doesn't work right. Now, ribbon microphones, if you guys are familiar with them, they're usually pretty fragile. So I would believe that someone would take in a microphone and either break it or not realize it's broken. And I think they're just like, yeah, it's broken, we're going to throw it away. Like, well, you listed it for $1. I will pay you that $1, and I will even pay you another $1 to ship it to me. And they're like, okay, man, if you want a broken mic, I will sell you a broken mic. I think it cost me $70 to get it re-ribboned. It's just like, holy cow, I can't believe that. That's just like one of a lot of options, or like a lot of deals I've gotten from our Guitar Center's used site. It's pretty amazing. Like, and it's not limited to recording gear, but I feel like recording gear doesn't hold its value a lot of times, so you're able to get good deals cheap. If you're going to go new, I put 3 people down here in the area. If you go to Guitar Center Highland Park, talk to Andy in Pro Audio and tell him I sent you. He's an old bandmate of mine, and he'll take care of you. And then Music Center Kenosha, ask for Todd. And then Music Around in Kenosha, or even Greenfield, if you guys find yourself in Greenfield, Wisconsin, like James and I did not too long ago. You can ask for Scott. He's the owner, and he's a good dude, and he'll take care of you guys. That's if you have to buy new, but they're all good people. So if I was to build like a cheap rig just to demo songs and my phone wasn't cutting it in terms of just like general skeletons, I'd just buy a cheap 2-channel XLR interface like Presonus or M Audio, and you could probably find them on Craigslist for under $100, and it would work. It has 2 channels of microphone inputs, and then just buy like MXL. I think Marshall owns MXL, or owned, somehow they were related, and it's just a cheap condenser mic that should allow you to record everything cleanly-ish, and that microphone is maybe $50. So I bet this recording, you pair this with Reaper, which is free-ish online. I mean, that's a $100 demo rig that would work. I could make some skeletons for a band, for $100 that sound, passable. And then if you're going to go for a bigger rig, I feel like almost all of my students have this rig in some capacity. The DigiDesign 002R, which used to be like a $2,000 interface, but these days you can pick them up. Like, I've seen them for like $150 on Craigslist, and they have 4 mic inputs, and that can get you by for a while. And then you can have, on that one, you have 4 external inputs, which allow you to plug in other mic preamps, so that can get you up to 8. And then it has, and we don't have to get too technical, but it has digital inputs that allow you to expand it even more. So that's why listed on here is the PreSonus Digimax FS. That's 8 other channels. So with minimal investment, you could get up to 16 channels really fast. And that's enough to record a band. And people have made good records with far less. You know, any people that were recording digitally in the 90s, Failure, Fantastic Planet, that was made on really, you know, ultimately cheap, crappy gear. Like it was like a Mackie console and ADAT machines, and that's an amazing sounding record. So, you know, a lot of times it's just, you can, if you know how to use it and use your ears, sometimes the gear just doesn't matter. So for this rig, Digio O2 and then the PreSonus, that they'll get you 12 channels, and then some event studio monitors. You know, I bet you could get all of that 200, 400, 600 bucks for a 12 channel recording rig, which is enough for probably like your rehearsal. If you wanted to record your rehearsals, that's enough. It's just an amazing option. That's where I started, and with the digital domain, and I feel like it's still viable right now, which is insane. And then lastly, if you want to learn more about recording, there are some pretty cool options out there. I love Create Live, and I think I've been talking about it pretty much every meeting. A lot of tutorials get costly because, you know, it takes time to make them, and like not only does it take time to make them, whoever's in the tutorial, they're spending a lot of hours on it. So they can be very, very pricey. So what Create Live does is they get cool people. So like the opposite of me, to do something similar to what this is, where they talk about things that they know about. And when they record it, when they do it live, it's free. And then for like the 2 days after that, it's a discounted price. And then after that, it goes up to whatever the regular price is. But not only do they have like, you know, they have like very cool professional people, it's done incredibly well. So my 2 favorites so far is they have Steve Evitz, if you guys are familiar. He's made pretty much every like indie rock, hardcore, pop punk record that you guys have ever listened to. He did all of the Saves the Day, Through Being Cool, up through now. He did all the Dillinger Escape Plan stuff. I mean, he's done everything. And he had a 2-day event about how he records guitars. That's all. And they got Ben Wyman from Dillinger Escape Plan to sit there next to him. And they talked about making sure how your guitars are set up properly, and then how to dial in a tone, and where to put the microphone, and how to set your preamp, and all the tricks that he does when he's making these successful records. And it was incredible, and it's so detailed, and it's like, oh, these guys are like normal, and they're humans, and they're musicians just like us, and you kind of forget that sometimes. Then the other one that was just like mind-blowing was Kurt Ballou from Converge. Like every heavy record that guy makes sounds like pure gold. The new Every Time I Die, I think, is like the most recent one that he did, and that's the first time that band sounded that good, and it's just like a punch in the ears in a good way. And Kurt Ballou just walked through the process, like from the beginning, like when you go talk to a band, all the way through giving them their final copy. It took 3 days, and it was amazing. I can't recommend that enough. So the fact that Create Live is even offering that, they do a ton, and it's not limited to music. They do like how to make your earrings sell faster on Etsy and things like that. But they do have just a ton of recording stuff, like how to sing better, by a professional singer. And like it was like an indie rock emo singer or something. I don't remember what band, but it's cool that they get professionals in the field. Lynda is just like another like big tutorial website. Groove 3 is another one, but Groove 3 is just audio. YouTube, I know it sounds crazy, but YouTube has all these videos on the internet that you can just go see. My mom called me one day, and she's like, on my iPad, there's a button I can press, and I can listen to like all the CeeLo that I want. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, it's called YouTube. I was like, makes total sense, Mom. So then the last one is the Recording Revolution, which is a blog, and he does podcasts and he does YouTube videos. And basically is trying to help people who don't know how to record. And it's so detailed and it's so efficient at communicating the knowledge required to do this without being overly technical. And it's just a guy in a bedroom, as far as I could tell. His name's Graham, and he's it's really impressive. And you go back and you start at the beginning with him, and he just kind of goes through and talks about the basics of recording. And he'll do like recording month, where every day he'll put up like a tip on YouTube of something that he did in a mix that he's working on. And I think he's doing audio for a living, so it's pretty cool. It's fun to have that option, like all this free stuff available for you. Not that Linda or Groove 3 are free, but there are a lot of free options that are worth checking out. That's all I've got. So if you guys have questions about building a recording rig, now's the time, or we're good. Sir. Interface.
For trying to record drums. I mean,
okay.
12 is probably optimal, right? To have all the pieces covered.
Well, first and foremost, it depends on the drum kit.
Right.
So if it's just like kick, snare, hi-hats, stray cat type of thing, you can get away with a lot less. But I'm guessing you were talking about a kit like yours that has like 40 rototoms, 11 crashes, 4 splashes, and a bell?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so yeah, obviously, it's worth considering one channel per part of your drum kit. And then normally, like when I'm recording a drum kit, I'm usually going 2 overheads and 2 rooms to start, because that's how I hear a drum kit. Like when you're playing a full beat, I don't just hear the snare. So, there's 4 channels right there. How many toms do you usually use? 3?
3, yeah.
So now we're up to 7, if I've done my math correctly. So now, let's say snare, right? Snare's usually top and bottom. So now we're at 9, hi-hat 10. So you're getting in the ballpark. If you want to do a ride, you can do that. It all adds up pretty quick. Most of the time, I'm doing 2 kick mics too. So like I'll do something that has some snap, and then something that has the bottom end. Some people will even do another mic on the outside to try and get some of that raw, resonant head sound. So it can add up quickly. I want to say that there was a Linkin Park record where they had, is it Linkin Park? No, Biology. You guys know Biology? That was like the From Autumn to Ashes side project band years ago. And I think that they used 40 mics or 40 channels on their drum kit. It was related to that. Maybe it was just From Autumn to Ashes. I don't know. Not that it matters, but just know that someone out there once used 40 mics on the drum kit. But having said that, I'm sure that sounds great and all, but you could just also go back and listen to When the Levee Breaks. And that was minimal. That was a couple of mics, ribbon mics, I think, run through like a tape echo system, not like an actual old school like branded tape echo. It was a Benson Echo Rec, which was also like a Pink Floyd tool, just a big box, and that's how it got just like this massive sound. But having said that, I worked on the recent Felix Culpa stuff, and when we recorded all the guitars and bass and vocals and all that stuff, Joel, the amazing, insane drummer, lives in Seattle and has like a small little demo rig. And he sent the drum tracks so we could record the rest of our stuff. And it sounded huge. And I was like, man, what did you do? And he's like, well, I don't have a lot, and I have a really small room. So I just kind of set up the drum kit in a position that I thought might sound good. And he used the little clip mics for snare and toms. And he used a single mono overhead, and then 2 room mics, and then a kick mic. Like pretty simple. But the two room mics gave him the stereo effect, and the mono overhead kind of captured the kit in general. And you wouldn't think, like, if you would have told me that on just on paper, like, this is what I did in a very small boxy room, I would have said that probably doesn't sound good. But Joel is an incredible musician, and not only is he an amazing drummer, like, I'm pretty sure that you could just put your iPhone in there and it'd still sound good because he's playing it. He also has a really good ear. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. He plays every instrument and sings better than most people. In my opinion, that makes him a huge jerk because I can't do that. But like, he has a record. He released a record that he did on his own in that little basement spot called Thereafter, and it's really good and it sounds good. And he played every instrument and sang and retracted and mixed it and did it all on his own. So a lot of times, like I said before, it's not necessarily the tools, but how you use them in your ears. But knowing you and the type of music that you normally play, I'm guessing that primarily roomy sounding kit is not what you're aiming for. So, yeah, I mean, like primarily close mics, and then with, the blended overhead and room. But having worked on your record the way we have, you can see what not having a room sounds like, and that is like, I really think that you need to start with rooms and overheads, because that's how we hear a drum kit, and then you paint in the other parts of the drum kit with what people usually call spot mics or close mics, because it's just not, it doesn't sound big. It sounds unbelievably unnatural when you don't have the other stuff in there. So, but yeah, I mean, 12 would be a good place to start. And like I said, you could build this rig. That's just in the interface, but you could build that for $600, and it's just shocking how good it is. That's what Shibes is rocking. Other questions? Thoughts? No? Good. Sweet. Everyone get home and go watch Sons of Anarchy and put in your fantasy football waiver claims for tomorrow. I shouldn't have said that. I'm in a league with you guys. Don't go home and do that. Thanks, guys.